Why it would suck to wake up as a Necron. Picture this. The galaxy in the 41st millennium, a place of endless war, ancient grudges and civilizations that rise and fall like sparks in the darkness. Among all the horrors that stalk the stars, few are as chilling or as tragic as the Necrons. They're not just killer robots. They're a civilization of once living beings who traded their souls for eternal existence in bodies of living metal, only to discover that eternity can be a prison. Today, we're diving deep into why it would absolutely suck to wake up one day and realize you're a Necron. From their tragic origins as the Necrontire to the cold, unfeeling existence that defines them now, we'll peel back the layers of necrodermis to reveal the truth behind the galaxy's most ancient mechanical empire. But before we begin, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy exploring the darkest corners of Warhammer 40,000 lore. Drop us a comment to let us know what's currently sitting on your painting or hobby desk, and what other factions or topics you'd love to hear us cover in future videos. Your feedback is the fuel that keeps this channel running, and the Omnissiah knows we need all the fuel we can get in the grim darkness of the far future. Imagine, if you will, that you wake up. You expect the comforting weight of a blanket across your chest, or the softness of a pillow beneath your head. Perhaps you expect the familiar rhythm of your own breath, the subtle warmth of life in your veins. Instead, there is silence. No heartbeat, no lungs, no flesh. Just the cold, unyielding weight of a metal sarcophagus pressing against your back. Your eyes flicker open, not with the blink of lids, but with the grinding rasp of optical shutters retracting, and the world that spills into your vision is nothing like the one you once knew. In that moment, you realize you are no longer a creature of flesh and fragile aspirations. You are Necron. You are one of the undying legions of the Tomb Worlds, an ancient revenant built not for life, but for unending conquest. And before you can even begin to grieve the loss of everything you were, you also realize there is no grief left inside you. Because your soul, your passions, your very identity have been stripped away, melted down into data, and uploaded into this cold mechanical shell. Congratulations, you are immortal, and it absolutely sucks. But before we wallow too deeply in your new reality, let's rewind the clock. To understand why waking up as a Necron is a curse disguised as triumph, you need to understand where it all began. Long before the Imperium, long before the Eldari danced across the stars with their pretensions of superiority, there were the Necrontire. The Necrontire were a people defined by bitterness. Their existence was a short and agonizing prelude to oblivion. Born beneath a star whose radiation was a constant, searing poison, they emerged into a universe that seemed determined to erase them as quickly as possible. Imagine living in a culture where every generation was haunted by the knowledge that they would shrivel and die before their ambitions could bear fruit. The Necrontire did not age gracefully. They decayed, their bodies betraying them, their lives measured in decades rather than centuries. While other civilizations blossomed with confidence in their longevity, the Necrontyr were a dying race from the first breath of their evolution. You can almost pity them. Their frustration curdled into obsession, a desperation to conquer time itself. They expanded across the stars, carrying their tomb cities with them. Wherever they settled, they built monolithic structures to defy decay. Great necropolises of black stone that squatted on alien worlds like funerary monuments. The Necrontire were not explorers out of curiosity. They were explorers out of rage. Every new star system was an opportunity to spit in the face of their mortality. But their resentment wasn't reserved only for the void. They found a perfect enemy in the old ones. These ancient beings, masters of life, of the warp, of biological engineering, had achieved everything the Necrontire craved: longevity, power, control. In the shadow of the old ones, the Necrontyr saw their own failings reflected back at them. And that reflection burned. So they did what any spiteful, doomed species would do: they declared war. They hurled their ships and weapons at the old ones and discovered, predictably, that their bitterness was no substitute for strength. For all their architectural arrogance, the The Necron tier were ants battering themselves against a boot. Their weapons were crude compared to the godlike mastery of the Old Ones. Their fleets disintegrated in battle. Entire generations perished, while the Old Ones simply created more life to fill the void. It was a slaughter. But the Necron tier were too stubborn to yield, even when extinction was the only logical conclusion to their campaign. And then, at the edge of desperation, they glimpsed salvation, or what they thought was salvation. In the heart of the stars themselves, they discovered something older, more terrible than even the Old Ones, the C'tan. The C'tan were star gods, colossal beings of living energy. They had existed since the birth of the cosmos, feeding on stellar radiation, their consciousnesses vast and alien. To the Necron tier, the C'tan were the answer to every question that had tormented them for millennia. Here were immortals, here was power, here was the promise that time itself could be conquered. And so the Necron tier began the process of awakening and worshipping these cosmic predators. It started innocently enough: rituals, entreaties, the construction of towering monuments to attract the C'tan's attention. But the C'tan were not benevolent deities waiting to bestow gifts on humble petitioners. They were predators, and the Necron tier were prey that willingly bared their throats. The C'tan accepted the Necron tier's worship. In return, they offered a miracle, a way to shed the fragile prison of flesh and ascend into bodies of living metal. Immortality was no longer a fantasy. It was within reach. All it required was a sacrifice, everything that made the Necron tier who they were, and so began the biotransference. Whole populations were marched into the furnaces of transformation. Imagine standing in line beside your family, your friends, all of you clutching the same delusion that you were on the brink of salvation. You could feel your flesh withering, even as the priests and cryptecs promised you eternal life. You could hear the screams of those who went before you as their souls were flayed from their bodies. But you stepped forward all the same because you were Necron tier, and you would do anything to defy death. When it was over, you opened your eyes, and they were no longer your eyes. The pain was gone. The disease was gone. Even mortality itself was gone. But so was everything else. Your laughter, your love, your identity. Your very soul was consumed. Some say devoured by the C'tan themselves. Some say scattered across the void. What remained was a cold, relentless awareness locked inside a body of necrodermis. You were now a Necron. As you might expect, not everyone was delighted with this outcome. Some retained a fragment of self-nobles, overlords, and lords who had bargained for the privilege of memory. But for the majority, all that remained was a programmed instinct to obey. The Necron race had achieved immortality, but at the price of becoming something less than alive. 1 billion souls extinguished, replaced by 1 billion empty vessels. It was at this moment, when the Necron tier's transformation was complete, that the C'tan revealed their true agenda. The Necrons were never intended to be partners. They were tools. The C'tan had hungered for the life energies of mortals, and the Necrons were now perfect instruments for harvesting them. What followed was the War in Heaven, a cataclysm that makes the Horus Heresy look like a tavern brawl. Armed with weapons of unimaginable power, the Necrons waged war on the Old Ones with a fury no longer restrained by mortality or compassion. Gauss weapons stripped flesh molecule by molecule. Canoptech constructs dismantled worlds brick by brick. The Necrons conquered and destroyed on a scale that defied comprehension. For a time they were victorious, the Old Ones fled or were annihilated. Entire civilizations vanished into extinction. And yet, even in victory, the Necrons were not free. They had traded one master for another. They had become the harvesters of the C'tan, bound to their star god's whims. It took eons, and an eventual uprising against the very beings who had uplifted them, for the Necrons to shatter their shackles. In a final act of rebellion, the Silent King and his followers devised a plan to turn their weapons on their former patrons. The C'tan were shattered into shards, fragments of power still too dangerous to destroy outright, but no longer omnipotent. The War in Heaven ended, but its consequences rippled across the galaxy. Exhausted, leaderless, and haunted by the knowledge of all they had become, the Necrons retreated into their tomb worlds. There, in vast necropolises buried beneath the surfaces of dead planets, they sealed themselves away in stasis. The Silent King departed the galaxy, leaving his people to slumber until the time came to rise again. Entire species evolved and died in the time it took the Necrons to dreamless sleep. And now you have awakened. You are one of these ancient revenants, your name forgotten, your passions extinct, your only purpose carved into your code. All that remains is the cold certainty that you cannot die and you cannot live. And that, dear viewer, is only the beginning of why it would suck to wake up as a Necron. So let's talk about what it actually feels like to exist as a Necron. Because let me assure you, it's not some cool Terminator-style power fantasy. It's a sensory prison. Imagine that you wake up in your new body, the transfer complete. You try to take a deep breath and there's nothing. No chest expanding, no lungs to fill. Air is irrelevant to you now. Your body doesn't need it. Your circulatory system is gone, replaced by channels of eerie green energy that glow beneath your necrodermis carapace. You are metal through and through. The first thing that hits you, or rather doesn't, is the absence of all the sensations you once took for granted. Taste, smell, the feel of sunlight on skin. Gone. You can see, but even sight is different now, purely optical, filtered through lenses and targeting arrays. It's as though reality itself has been reduced to a digital image, sharp and perfect, but somehow sterile. There's no warmth to the colors, no texture. The universe has become a photograph. Touch exists, in a way, but only as pressure sensors reporting data back to your core. You can feel weight, you can feel force, but there's no pleasure in silk sliding over metal fingertips, no chill of water running across your hands. Imagine touching the face of someone you once loved and feeling nothing but a note in your internal HUD, contact registered. Hearing too has changed. Your auditory receptors are flawless, capable of passing sounds far beyond the range of human ears. You hear every whisper of static, every creak of shifting tomb metal, every vibration in the air. Yet music, laughter, the soft hush of a voice you cherish, they don't move you anymore. They're just frequencies logged and categorized by your subroutines. You don't get tired, your joints don't ache, your muscles don't burn with lactic acid. That might sound like a win until you realize how much of your humanity was tied to those frailties. The pain of effort, the heat of adrenaline, the flush of blood to your face when anger or embarrassment surges, all of it is gone. Your body can keep marching, fighting, killing without a single tremor of exhaustion. You've become the perfect soldier, and in losing your weaknesses, you've lost the feeling of being alive. Now consider immortality. The Necrons are designed to endure forever. Your necrodermis is virtually indestructible, able to repair itself molecule by molecule. Blades shatter against your alloy bones. Bolter rounds crater your torso, but leave no permanent mark. Even if an enemy manages to blast you apart, there's a significant chance you'll simply stand back up a few moments later as the reanimation protocols knit your body back together. Sounds great, right? Well, here's the problem. Reanimation protocols are not gentle. Imagine dying violently, your body obliterated by Gauss fire, plasma blasts, or a chainsword carving through your spine. Your consciousness flickers out for an instant, your systems collapsing into a shutdown. Then, without warning, you jolt back to life in a patchwork body still sizzling with residual energy, data streams scrambling to realign your mind. You stand up, surrounded by the remnants of your own shattered limbs, only to be shot down again. Over and over. Death becomes an endless loop of system reboots, each one robbing you of another fragment of memory or sanity. And that's if your protocols work properly. For some Necrons, the reanimation routines glitch out, leaving them crawling across the battlefield, dragging sparking limbs, chittering digital nonsense. Warriors with fragmented programming become little more than shambling wrecks, driven by reflexes they barely understand. There's nothing dignified about immortality when you're glitching like a corrupted file. Another little bonus of being a Necron: sleep mode. Necrons don't experience sleep like mortals do. They undergo stasis, a perfect, timeless suspension where every atomic vibration ceases. Sounds peaceful, right? Now imagine drifting off into darkness and waking up 60 million years later. Everything you once knew is gone. Your culture is a fossil. The stars have shifted in the heavens. Civilizations rose and fell while you were effectively dead. Even the shape of the galaxy has changed. And the worst part? You don't even get dreams to keep you company during the long silence. It's just nothingness. Worse still, some Necrons don't fully emerge from stasis. Faulty resurrection subroutines mean some wake up only half aware or caught in cycles of corrupted memory. Imagine opening your eyes, convinced you're still at war with the old ones, attacking anything that moves. Or worse, waking up in a world where your own dynasty has been usurped and you're now a nobody in your former realm. Identity is fragile for a machine race, and being forgotten is one of the worst fates imaginable. That's the reality of the Necron body. Immortality sounds glorious, but it's a brittle, soulless eternity wrapped in silence and disconnection from everything that once made existence worthwhile. And yet, even in this cold mechanical prison, there's still society. Let's talk about that next. Being a Necron doesn't mean you're just a lone robot wandering through the void. Oh no. Necron society is a Byzantine labyrinth of dynastic politics, rigid hierarchies, and monumental egos. Even stripped of flesh, the Necrontyr couldn't shed their instinct for status and pride. Let's delve into the gleaming halls of the Tomb Worlds and see how this immortal empire organizes itself. At the pinnacle of it all sits the Pharaon, the supreme ruler of a dynasty. Think of the Pharaon as a king, a god emperor, and a CEO all rolled into one. Each Pharaon presides over a vast realm of tomb worlds, fleets, and legions. Their word is law, their power absolute. Except, well, not entirely. Because beneath every Pharaon is an endless cascade of noble lords, overlords, viziers, cryptechs, and warlords, each plotting their own schemes, hoarding secrets, and maneuvering for power. Immortality has not dulled ambition, it's simply stretched it across eons. Overlords serve directly beneath Pharaons, often commanding entire sectors or leading massive military campaigns. Many of them were once kings in their own right before the biotransference, and their memories and personalities were largely preserved, sometimes intentionally, sometimes not. This means they remember old slights, ancient rivalries, and countless insults spanning millennia. If there's one thing Necron nobility excels at, it's holding a grudge. An overlord might dispatch a Tombblade squadron to annihilate a rival simply because of an insult uttered 5 million years ago. Below the overlords are lords, a tier of nobility who often act as governors, battlefield commanders, or administrators. Some maintain vivid personalities and eccentricities. Others have become so hollowed out by millennia of existence that they operate on pure protocol, like particularly murderous office managers. There's a vast spectrum of how much individuality remains, which makes every interaction in Necron high society a gamble. You might be speaking to a cunning manipulator with grand designs, or a blank-eyed husk who simply repeats the same rote phrases for eternity. Cryptechs are a fascinating class unto themselves. They're the Necron equivalents of scientists, engineers, and mad inventors. They create and maintain the wondrous and terrifying technologies that keep the tomb worlds running. From Gauss weapon arrays to stasis crits, from canoptech constructs to reality-bending hypertechnology, the cryptechs are the ones tinkering behind the scenes. They wield enormous power, both because of their intellect and because nobody else quite understands how all the tomb systems actually work. Upset a cryptech, and you might find your stasis chamber set to eternal error state. And then we come to the rank and file, the warriors. The vast majority of Necron soldiers are warriors, once citizens of the Necrontyr, now reduced to mindless automatons. The tragedy is that these beings were once individuals with names, families, and dreams. Now they're mass-produced murder machines, marching forward in perfect silence, eyes glowing green. They don't speak, they don't think independently, and they don't remember who they used to be. Yet occasionally, fragments of identity break through. A warrior might suddenly pause, cock its metallic head, as if straining to recall a distant memory. But it always fades, consumed by the programming that drives them. Above the warriors stand the immortals, elite soldiers with slightly more robust programming and resilience. While still largely mindless, they're tougher, deadlier, and often entrusted with crucial tactical positions. If the warriors are the expendable hammer, the immortals are the surgical blade. Then there are the Lishguard. The Lishguard are bodyguards, chosen from the most formidable Necron warriors to stand eternal vigil over their overlords and pharaons. They're fiercely loyal, sometimes retaining slivers of personality, which makes them slightly more interesting than your average automaton. Imagine a royal guard who will decapitate intruders without hesitation, and also quietly judge your taste in interior decor. Necron society is profoundly hierarchical, but it's also fractious. Dynasties feud endlessly, driven by grudges that span epochs. Resources, tomb worlds, alien artifacts, all are reasons for conflict. And then there's Sarek, the Silent King, the former ruler of all Necrontire and the architect of their transformation. Though he vanished into self-imposed exile, rumors persist that he's returned, moving among the stars, seeking to unify his people once more. Whether he'll save the Necrons or doom them all over again is anyone's guess. Yet for all their elaborate hierarchy and protocols, Necron society is underpinned by a bleak truth: their culture has no joy. There's no music, no art, no poetry. Conversations are transactional. Rituals are sterile. Celebrations are non-existent. The only culture left is the endless pursuit of order, conquest, and the reclamation of their ancient empire. It's like living in an office where the meetings never end and everyone's immortal. Worse still, the Necrons know what they've lost. Many overlords and nobles remember feasts, songs, lovers, and laughter. Now, all that remains is the cold echo of memory rattling around inside titanium skulls. It's a society defined by regret and denial, where the upper echelons pretend to rule with purpose, while the lower castes shuffle through eternity on autopilot. So if you wake up as a Necron, remember this: you're not just stuck in a soulless metal body. You're stuck in a civilization where everyone is immortal, no one is happy, and your boss might decide to vaporize you because of something you did 10 million years ago. Let's talk about one of the few consolations to being a Necron: their technology. Because if there's any silver lining to waking up as a soulless robot, it's that your people command some of the most terrifying science the galaxy has ever known. And yet, even this so-called gift comes with a price. Imagine holding a weapon that doesn't simply kill, but erases. Necron Gorse technology operates on principles that would drive most Xenos engineers insane. These weapons don't fire projectiles, nor do they project crude beams of energy like human lasguns. Instead, they strip matter apart one molecule at a time. Flesh, armor, bone, it all unravels in a hiss of green lightning, leaving behind little more than dust. There's no cauterization, no glorious blood spray. The victim simply dissolves, screaming, into nothing. It's efficient, clean, and utterly terrifying. And you're the one pulling the trigger. But wielding such power feels different when you're a Necron. There's no rush of adrenaline, no pounding heart. You watch your enemies crumble with cold indifference, like a machine executing a subroutine. You don't even get the satisfaction of a victory cheer, just the soft crackle of dying particles and the click of your weapon cycling for the next target. And yet, even Gorse weapons are just the beginning. Necron armies deploy with an array of constructs that would look more at home in nightmares than in a military parade. There are Canoptek scarabs, tiny metallic insects that swarm across battlefields, eating through metal, armor, and flesh alike. They're not mindless drones either. Scarabs can dismantle technology at the molecular level, break into sealed vaults, or devour entire vehicles like a cloud of razor-edged locusts. Then there are the Canoptech spiders, towering insectoid constructs bristling with manipulators and welding tools. Spiders perform repairs on damaged Necrons mid-battle, scuttling over shattered warriors and reassembling them piece by piece. Imagine lying there, half dismembered, and a giant mechanical arachnid looms over you, plugging in new limbs while your systems reboot. That's the Necron version of battlefield medicine. Necron vehicles are equally bizarre. Monoliths are towering pyramidal fortresses that hover across the battlefield, their surfaces rippling with shifting hieroglyphs. They function as transports, weapons platforms, and portals. A monolith can phase into real space, vomit out entire squads of Necron warriors, and then blast enemy fortifications with particle whips that reduce bunkers to glowing slag. From the outside, it looks like a floating temple of doom. From the inside, well, you wouldn't actually feel anything at all. Just the faint vibration of your servos as the monolith slides forward to obliterate your enemies. Doomsday arcs unleash energy barrages powerful enough to annihilate heavy armor from across the battlefield. Tomb blades zip through the air like metallic wasps, carrying Gorse arrays that can shred infantry or tanks alike. Ghost arcs glide forward, ferrying ranks of warriors while repairing them mid-battle. Every piece of Necron technology hums with eerie green light and is built to last for eternity. And let's not forget teleportation. Necrons phase in and out of reality at will. One moment you're on your tomb world, standing among ranks of dormant warriors. The next, you're phasing into a battle halfway across the galaxy. No ships, no warp travel. Just instantaneous relocation. It's a tactical advantage of staggering proportions, but for a Necron, it's nothing special, merely a function of your species' technological supremacy. Yet there's a darker side to Necron technology. They don't fully understand it anymore. The Cryptechs maintain ancient systems whose blueprints have been lost to time. Tomb world systems occasionally glitch, resurrecting armies prematurely or misinterpreting ancient commands. Imagine being woken from stasis because a single piece of corrupted code mistook a meteor impact for an enemy invasion. You stagger into the light, weapons primed, only to discover there's nothing to kill but empty rock. Necron technology is as much a curse as it is a gift. It ensures victory on the battlefield, but it also traps the Necrons in endless cycles of war. There's no innovation anymore, just maintenance, patching, and the eternal reactivation of systems older than most stars. The Necrons are caretakers of a technological empire they can barely control, shackled to relics of a past they can't fully remember. And that, in a nutshell, is the tragedy of Necron warfare. They're the apex predators of technology, yet their superiority offers no satisfaction. Their enemies see horror and marvels. The Necrons see only protocols and combat reports. Victory doesn't taste sweet because they can't taste anything at all. But technology alone doesn't define the Necrons. Let's dive into something even deeper, their philosophy and twisted religion. For a race of beings who transcended flesh, the Necrons remain shockingly religious, though religious may not mean quite what it does for humans or Eldari. Their belief system is complicated, rooted in history, trauma, and betrayal. And if you wake up as a Necron, you're inheriting every last ounce of that baggage. The Necromtai were bitterly envious of the Old Ones, and much of their spiritual fervor was born from desperation. The Konton presented themselves as gods, luminous beings of cosmic power. And for a time, the Necrontyr believed. They built towering monuments, offered up tributes, and worshipped the Citan as divine saviors. But the reality was darker. The Catan were predators who devoured life force and manipulated the Necrontyr into sacrificing their bodies and souls. This betrayal left deep scars in the Necron psyche. Many Necrons still remember glimpses of that worship and the horror of realizing their gods saw them as nothing but fuel. The Citan are now reviled. The Silent King, Zarek, orchestrated the shattering of the Can into shards, each fragment sealed away or weaponized. Necron armies now deploy Sartan shards like living weapons, chaining cosmic entities into servitude. Imagine turning your ex-god into a battery for your personal laser cannon. That's Necron vengeance in a nutshell. Yet not all Necrons hate the Captain equally. Some dynasties still harbor cults who revere these star gods, convinced that true immortality lies in returning to their service. These rogue factions pose internal threats to Necron unity, creating schisms that span entire tomb worlds. If you wake up as a Necron, you might discover your dynasty is embroiled in civil war, torn between loyalty to the Silent King and secret devotion to the very beings who betrayed them. Then there's the philosophical angle. The Necrons are profoundly nihilistic. They've seen the galaxy rise and fall. They remember empires that flourished for millions of years, only to vanish in cosmic dust. Their perspective is chillingly detached. Why care about the struggles of flesh-bound species when everything is destined to rot and fade? To many Necrons, existence itself has become an endless loop of boredom and obligation. But this nihilism is mixed with an equally powerful obsession: reclamation. The Necrons want their empire back. They look upon the galaxy like landlords evicting squatters from their property. Every Xenos race, every human colony, every alien star fortress. These are all seen as trespassers in a galaxy that rightfully belongs to the Necrons. Their wars of reclamation are not simply conquests. They're acts of cosmic tidying up. Yet even here lies the tragedy. Some Necrons remember the glory days before biotransference, vibrant cultures, sciences, and philosophies. Others know only the cold calculations of conquest. The Silent King, in particular, carries the heaviest burden. Sarik initiated the biotransference to save his people, only to realize he'd damned them to soulless eternity. Racked by guilt, he abandoned his throne and vanished into exile, leaving his people in stasis. Now, rumors swirl that Sarek has returned. He drifts between tomb worlds, seeking to unify the Necrons and repair the damage he caused. But can a civilization whose soul was devoured ever truly be saved? Even Sarek's presence provokes uncertainty. Is he the redeemer of the Necrons or the harbinger of a new galactic apocalypse? Religion and philosophy remain, ironically, the most human parts of the Necrons. These immortal machines cling to belief systems and existential questions because without them, there's nothing left but the void. Even the most ruthless overlords sometimes find themselves staring into the darkness of deep space, wondering if their immortality is a curse with no escape. So if you wake up as a Necron, know this: your body may be forged of indestructible necrodermis, but your mind will still grapple with cosmic betrayal, existential dread, and a deep, gnawing question: was immortality really worth the price? So let's turn our gaze outward for a moment. Because if you think waking up as a Necron is bad enough on its own, wait until you remember just how many things in the galaxy want you dead, or, at the very least, disassembled into scrap. The Necrons, as one of the galaxy's oldest races, have enemies stretching back into myth. Practically every faction you can name has crossed paths with them at some point, and those who haven't inevitably will. It's a cosmic inevitability because nothing in the grim darkness of the far future stays buried forever. First, there's the Imperium of Man. To the Necrons, humanity is a race of upstart primates barely out of their own Stone Age. Yet the Imperium sees the Necrons as an existential threat, an ancient menace awakening from forgotten tombs to reclaim the galaxy. Imperial forces encounter Necron tomb worlds with varying results. Sometimes, they manage to purge a tomb complex before it fully awakens. More often, though, the first warning the Imperium gets is when green lightning scythes through the ranks, reducing entire companies of guardsmen to molecular residue. Space Marines fare better, of course. Power armor and bolters go a long way, but even they struggle against Necron resilience. The Codex Astartes never prepared them for enemies who simply stand back up after being blasted apart. Picture a squad of Ultramarines staring in disbelief as the Necron warriors they just slaughtered begin knitting themselves back together mid-battle. It's enough to shake even the Emperor's finest. Then there are the Eldari. Few races hate the Necrons quite like the Eldari do, and with good reason. It was the Necrons who helped break the power of the Old Ones, indirectly paving the way for the chaos and doom that would eventually swallow the Eldari civilization. There's an ancient bitterness there, layered over a newer, practical fear. Eldari craft worlds regard Necron tomb worlds as ticking time bombs, and they often deploy strike teams to sabotage Necron awakenings before they can gain momentum. Eldari Farseers, with their talent for seeing threads of fate, have entire libraries devoted to prophecies of Necron resurgence. It's no exaggeration to say that the Eldari see the Necrons as one of the single greatest threats to galactic stability. Their disdain is matched only by their terror. The Orcs, of course, don't care about prophecies, or history, or existential horror. Orcs love the Necrons for the sheer joy of fighting them. For Orcs, Necrons are the shiny boys. All that gleaming metal is irresistible. Necrons, meanwhile, find the Orcs maddening. No matter how many Orcs they vaporize, there are always more. Gauss flayers disassemble greenskins molecule by molecule, and the Orcs just keep coming, laughing, hollering, and eager for another scrap. For the Necrons, Orcs are an infestation that refuses to die. For the Orcs, Necrons are the perfect brawl. It's the galaxy's most bizarre comedy of mutual loathing and admiration. Somewhere out there, a Necron overlord has almost certainly uttered the digital equivalent of a long, weary sigh when his sensors pick up a AAAGH approaching his tomb world. And then there's the Tyranids. Necrons and Tyranids are an odd pairing. The Necrons have no biomass for the Great Devourer to consume. Tyranids can't feed on metal and necrodermis. Yet Tyranids still attack Necron tomb worlds, driven by some instinct or simply devouring anything in their path. Worse, there's evidence suggesting the Tyranids have begun adapting to counter Necron technology. Imagine being an immortal robot race and discovering that even the cosmic locust swarm can learn to bypass your defenses. Some Necron cryptex theorize that the Tyranids might have been engineered, or at least guided, by remnants of the Old Ones as a failsafe against the Necrons. If true, it would mean the Necrons and Tyranids are locked in an endless cycle of cosmic revenge, orchestrated by beings who have long since vanished. The Tau, meanwhile, barely register on the Necron radar. To the Necrons, the Tau Empire is a speck of blue insignificance. Yet even the Tau have encountered Necron tomb worlds, usually with catastrophic consequences. The Tau's advanced technology is impressive until it collides with the cold eternity of Necron weaponry. For all their talk of the greater good, the Tau have no philosophy to counter warriors who don't even acknowledge their existence as relevant. Chaos, interestingly, represents a unique threat to the Necrons. Not because daemons can simply kill Necrons. The daemons' warp-based weapons often struggle to harm entities that barely register as alive, but the Necrons hate the warp itself. They see it as a realm of madness, sorcery, and corruption. Necron technology is designed to be entirely immune to the warp's influence. Yet when chaos surges across a world, even Necron tomb complexes can be affected. Warp storms distort stasis fields, scramble resurrection protocols, and drive even the most logical Necron nobles into flickers of corrupted code. Necron hatred for the warp borders on religious zealotry. In their view, the warp represents everything they sought to escape: the chaos of emotion, the frailty of flesh, the unpredictable swirl of psychic power. To the Necrons, chaos isn't merely an enemy. It's the antithesis of their entire existence. So while Chaos Space Marines, or daemonic hordes, may not directly kill Necrons in the same way they slaughter mortals, they still pose an existential threat to the entire Necron species. All of this makes the Necrons one of the most embattled species in the galaxy. You'd think being nearly indestructible would grant some peace of mind, but instead, it's an eternal state of siege. Everyone either fears you, wants to study you, or simply wants to turn you into scrap for salvage. And no matter how many times your enemies fall before your Gorse weapons, the galaxy remains a hostile place. Now let's talk about one of the most horrifying and absurd parts of being a Necron, the boredom. Imagine this, you drift off into stasis one day, your body locking into perfect stillness. There's no sense of time passing. It's a dreamless oblivion. For all intents and purposes, you're dead. And then you wake up. It might be 1,000 years later, or 1,000,000, or 60 million. Everything you knew is gone. Empires have risen and fallen. Stars have aged, exploded, and been reborn. Species you once enslaved have evolved into entirely new civilizations. It's like stepping out of your house and discovering your neighborhood has been replaced with an alien city. The Necrons don't just awaken into a changed galaxy, they awaken into irrelevance. Their empires, once so mighty, are often forgotten ruins. Maps of star systems are outdated by millions of years, political borders are meaningless, entire star clusters have shifted position. Imagine the sheer cosmic disorientation of waking up and discovering the planet you conquered last time is now part of an Imperial sector ruled by humans who've never even heard of you. And that's the Necrons who wake up properly. Many Necrons suffer partial awakenings. Systems glitch, memories scramble. A Necron overlord might emerge convinced that the war in heaven is still raging, ordering his legions to attack anything in sight. Or an entire tomb world might awaken into civil war because its noble lords remember conflicting claims to the throne from eons ago. For the rank-and-file warriors, the experience is even more bizarre. They awaken, look around, receive new target coordinates, and march off to war as though they'd only been asleep for a night. There's no emotional response, no curiosity about how much time has passed. But among those who retain personality, the weight of time is crushing. Consider the Silent King, Zarek. He spent millions of years wandering the void, wrestling with the guilt of what he did to his people. He's watched countless empires rise and fall. For a being like him, time has become meaningless. Even his efforts to unify the Necrons feel like motions in a cosmic dance whose steps he's forgotten. This cosmic ennui filters through Necron society like a fog. Lords convene councils to discuss reconquest strategies, but their conversations circle endlessly. The same arguments, the same plans repeated over centuries. Overlords squabble about resources, territory, and honor, but underneath it all lies a hollow boredom. Nothing excites them, nothing surprises them. They've seen it all before, and they'll see it all again. And that's the ultimate curse of Necron immortality. Even if you wanted to find some spark of joy in your existence, you can't. Your body is incapable of feeling pleasure or passion. You can't distract yourself with art, music, or love. You can't drown your sorrows in Amasek or lose yourself in dreams. There's only the silence of the tomb and the infinite march of time. Necron boredom is a special kind of hell. The galaxy might be aflame with constant war, but for you, each battle feels like a rerun. You execute your combat subroutines, your weapons fire, your enemies fall, and then you return to your tomb to await the next conflict. And all the while, some tiny spark buried deep inside your code wonders whether this endless existence is worse than simply ceasing to exist altogether. So if you wake up as a Necron, remember this: your enemies are countless, your body is a prison, and even if you survive every war the galaxy can throw at you, you'll be left to stare into eternity, haunted by the same terrible question: what's the point? Let's talk about the personalities behind the metal masks. Because while the vast majority of Necrons are little more than walking automatons, there are some whose individuality survived the biotransference. These famous Necrons are the beating, or rather, humming heart of the dynasties. And if you wake up as one of them, your existence might be less mindless, but infinitely more complicated. First, we have Cyrek, the Silent King. Once the absolute ruler of the Necron tier and later the entire Necron race, Cyrek is a figure as tragic as he is mighty. He was the one who brokered the bargain with the Shaitan, believing that biotransference would save his people from the slow death of their radioactive sun. Instead, he damned them all to soulless eternity. Haunted by guilt, Sarek shattered the Catan and then exiled himself into the void, leaving his people in stasis. For 60 million years, he wandered the intergalactic darkness, grappling with the knowledge that he had murdered an entire civilization's souls to preserve their bodies. Now he's back, drifting from tomb world to tomb world, trying to unify his people for some final purpose. Is he trying to redeem himself, or to set the galaxy ablaze one last time? Nobody knows. Not even Sarek. Being the Silent King sounds prestigious until you realize that you're carrying the weight of genocide on your metal shoulders with no hope of ever truly forgiving yourself. Every Necron who suffers, every fragment of a soul lost in the Great Sleep, all of it lies at Sarek's feet. So if you wake up as the Silent King, congratulations, you're simultaneously an emperor and the galaxy's most tormented soul. Then there's Imhotep, the Stormlord. A master tactician and overlord of the Sortek dynasty, Imhotep is one of the most active Necron rulers in the current galaxy. He's cold, calculating, and brilliant. An immortal strategist whose campaigns are the stuff of nightmares for the Imperium. Unlike many Necrons, Imhotep revels in conquest. He's not just running on ancient programming, he actively seeks to expand his empire, test his genius, and humiliate his enemies. Imhotep's military genius is legendary. Entire Imperial crusades have crumbled under his perfectly timed ambushes and meticulously coordinated strikes. He uses lightning storms, triggered by Necron weather control tech, to cloak his forces and sow chaos among enemy ranks. If you wake up as Imhotep, you're a living embodiment of arrogance and competence, a figure who commands absolute obedience and who's never known defeat. But you're also eternally bored. Because what challenge is left for the galaxy's greatest tactician when every foe feels like an insect under your heel? Then there's Trazyn the Infinite. Possibly the galaxy's most hilariously annoying Necron, Trazyn is the ultimate collector. Imagine an overlord whose passion is acquiring historical curiosities from every civilization. His vaults are filled with priceless relics, alien treasures, and people. Yes, entire squads of Space Marines, Inquisitors, Eldar Seers, even other Necrons, all neatly sealed in stasis fields as part of his collection. Trazyn doesn't necessarily mean harm. He genuinely believes he's preserving history. But his idea of preserving history includes stealing irreplaceable artifacts from Imperial museums or teleporting entire regiments into his vaults mid-battle. He's been known to deploy his private collection of preserved warriors in emergencies, like someone pulling out collectibles from a display shelf for a quick skirmish. If you wake up as Trazyn, you're an eccentric, immortal art hoarder whose hobbies have directly fueled half the galaxy's diplomatic crises. And then there's Orikan the Diviner. Orikan is a cryptech whose mastery of chronomancy, the manipulation of time itself, is unmatched. He spent countless eons studying the flows of fate, performing calculations so complex they'd make an Eldar Farseer weep. Orikan has predicted numerous major galactic events, often with eerie precision. But Orikan is also, quite frankly, a colossal jerk. He's arrogant, secretive, and convinced of his own infallibility. He regularly schemes to elevate himself to godhood or seize greater power, regardless of the consequences. His rivalries with other cryptechs and with Trazyn are legendary. If you wake up as Orikan, you're a genius beyond mortal comprehension, but you're also an insufferable egomaniac who may or may not have accidentally warped the timeline once or twice. Each of these figures embodies the contradictions at the heart of Necron existence. They're beings of immense power and intelligence, but also burdened by past trauma, guilt, and the sheer weight of eternity. Their individuality survived the biotransference, but sometimes you wonder if that's truly a blessing. And so we come to the final layer of Necron life, the everyday existence of an immortal machine. Because as terrifying as it is to be a Necron lord or famous figure, It might be even worse to be a regular citizen, or what passes for one. What does everyday life look like for a Necron? The short answer, it doesn't. There's no life, per se. No markets bustling with traders, no families gathering for meals, no art or music or festivals. Necron civilization is a culture of silence and function, running like clockwork because there's literally nothing else to do. For many Necrons, especially the warriors, the concept of daily life is meaningless. When not at war, they stand in rank upon rank within stasis tombs. Rows of metal forms, utterly still, waiting for the next command. They don't think. They don't dream. They simply exist as perfect machines suspended in eternal readiness. Higher up the chain, things are more interesting. Lords and overlords still retain a semblance of personality. When not waging war, they occupy themselves with dynastic politics. Council meetings drone on for centuries, debates about territory, protocol, or ancient insults. Some overlords become obsessed with rituals, commanding their Lich Guard to perform elaborate ceremonies purely for the sake of structure. Others brood over old maps, plotting how to retake star systems lost during the Great Sleep. Cryptechs spend their leisure time maintaining tomb systems, upgrading constructs, and experimenting with forbidden sciences. Imagine the worst workaholic you've ever known, and then imagine him immortal with access to reality warping technology. Cryptechs are endlessly busy, but not because they love their work. It's simply the only thing left that gives them purpose. Maintenance of tomb worlds is a constant task. Tomb complexes are vast and ancient, their systems prone to glitches. Canoptech constructs scurry through tunnels, cleaning dust, polishing walls, and ensuring that every sarcophagus is ready to open at a moment's notice. Even in times of peace, the tomb world hums with quiet activity. Energy cores require recalibration. Stasis matrices need alignment. Gauss arrays must be tested. It's like living inside an ancient machine that needs constant oiling, except the oil is quantum nanotechnology. And yet, for all this technological splendor, there's nothing personal in it. Necrons don't decorate their chambers with mementos. There are no works of art adorning the walls. Even their architectural grandeur serves a purely functional purpose. Columns sized to accommodate monoliths, vaults designed for efficient troop deployment. It's stunning to look at, but utterly sterile. There's also a grim sense of routine. A Necron might awaken, check system status, receive combat data, deploy to a battlefield, vaporize some enemies, then return to stasis. Repeat for eternity. For nobles, the routine includes governance, feuds, and scheming. But it's still the same cycle: awaken, command, plan, sleep. Occasionally, small moments of individuality break through. An overlord might pause to examine a captured alien artifact, pondering its craftsmanship. A cryptech might become briefly fascinated by the color patterns in a warp anomaly. These flashes of curiosity are like ghosts of the beings they once were, but they always fade, swallowed by the programming that demands function above all else. For those who remember their mortal lives, the contrast is torture. Imagine recalling the taste of wine, the thrill of battle fury in your veins, the softness of silk, and realizing none of it is possible anymore. Even rage is muted, processed into precise tactical decisions rather than wild emotion. Many Necron nobles maintain elaborate illusions of courtly life, purely to fill the void, staging mock feasts and ceremonies despite knowing no one can taste the food or feel joy. And that's everyday life as a Necron. There's no passion, no art, no real pleasure, only endless duty, silence, and the weight of a past no one can truly leave behind. The tombs are not merely places of rest. They are prisons where consciousness waits in darkness until the galaxy needs another round of murder and conquest. So if you wake up as a Necron, know this: even on your best day, life is just the absence of war, filled with maintenance schedules, ancient grudges, and the hollow echo of memories that no longer mean anything. Congratulations, you're living the eternal dream, and it's empty as the void. We've wandered through the silent tombs, stared into the glimmering green eyes of ancient overlords, and felt the weight of eternity pressing down like a sarcophagus lid. If there's one thing you should take away from this dark odyssey, it's this: waking up as a Necron would absolutely suck. Sure, on the surface, immortality sounds appealing. You're nearly indestructible. Your weapons can erase enemies from existence with surgical precision. Your empire once ruled the stars, and there's still a faint chance you might reclaim it all. But peel back the necrodermis, and the price becomes horrifyingly clear. You'd exist in a body that can't feel, taste, or love. You'd drift through an eternity of silence and routine, haunted by echoes of a life you barely remember. Your very soul would be gone, consumed, scattered, or locked away. And even as a noble overlord with all your memories intact, you'd find yourself trapped in endless cycles of politics, grudges, and cosmic ennui. Victory would bring no joy. Peace would bring only boredom. There is no real life left, only function, protocol, and the cold logic of an empire that remembers what it lost. Your enemies are countless. The Imperium hunts you. The Aldari fear you. Orcs want to scrap you for shiny bits. Tyranids might try to eat you, even though you're nothing but metal. Chaos seeks to warp and corrupt you. And all the while, your fellow Necrons might betray you over ancient rivalries or forgotten slights. In the end, Necron immortality isn't freedom. It's a prison built of necrodermis, stasis fields, and memories of a golden age that can never return. It's the ultimate cautionary tale of a people who traded their souls to conquer time and lost everything that made existence worth living. So next time you're rolling dice on the tabletop and fielding a Necron army, spare a moment of pity for those silent warriors. Behind those green eyes flickers the faintest spark of what they used to be. They are not merely killing machines. They're tragic reminders that immortality can be the cruelest fate of all. If you enjoyed this dive into Necron lore, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more journeys into the dark corners of the Warhammer 40,000 universe. Drop us a comment to let us know what's currently on your hobby desk, what projects you're working on, and what factions or stories you'd like to explore next. Your feedback fuels us, and we love hearing from fellow lore enthusiasts. Until next time, remember, in the grim darkness of the far future, even immortality has a price.